Imagine a machine so colossal, it defies the very roads built for lesser vehicles. At 4.5 meters wide, wider than a semi-truck and a half, it's outlawed from public highways, a true off-highway leviathan designed to conquer forests where no other could tread. Weighing in at over 50 tons fully loaded, this Pacific P16 could haul logs heavier than a blue whale, dragging entire hillsides of timber through swamps and slopes that would snap lesser rigs like twigs. But this one, it's been dead for decades, abandoned in the 1990s when the logging boom crashed, left to rot in a forgotten clearing. Vines choke its exhaust stacks, rust devours its frame, and the air reeks of damp decay and pine sap. Pistons seized solid by time, fuel lines turned to tar. Yet against all odds, a band of mechanical resurrectors stumbled upon it. Cut to grainy archival footage of vibrant 1970s logging operations, chainsaws roaring, logs tumbling into massive piles. Overlay stats, 50-plus tons hauling capacity. The burning question, could they awaken this sleeping giant? Bring back to life a beast built when men wrestled nature with raw steel and diesel fury? Epic music swells. Title card fades in. Pacific P16, how they brought a dead giant back to life. Slow zoom on the moss-covered cab, water dripping from rusted door handles. Deep in the wild heart of Vancouver Island, the 1960s and 70s marked the golden age of industrial conquest. Towering cedars and firs, some older than the Roman Empire, blanketed the rugged terrain. Mountains plunging into fjords, bogs that swallowed bulldozers whole, slopes slick with eternal rain. The logging industry was Canada's lifeblood, fueling homes, ships, and the post-war boom. But standard trucks? Useless. They bogged down in mud, flipped on icy grades, shattered axles on roots thicker than a man's thigh. Enter the Pacific P16, born from desperation in the shipyards and machine shops of coastal British Columbia. Engineers at Pacific Car and Foundry didn't just build a truck, they forged a terrestrial battleship. Why? Because the old skidders and cats couldn't keep up with the insatiable demand. One P16 could replace a fleet of lesser machines, yanking 100-ton log bundles through hellish undergrowth where helicopters were too costly and rail lines couldn't reach. Vintage photos, engineers in hard hats sketching blueprints over coffee-stained tables, black and white clips of log jams being exploded with dynamite, maps highlighting Vancouver Island's impenetrable forests. It was the era of unbridled ambition, the Cold War fueling resource grabs, union strong and regulations loose. No emission standards to hobble it, no safety nannies to soften the blow. These were machines for men who viewed the forest as an enemy to be crushed. The P16 wasn't born in a factory showroom. It was hammered out for war against wilderness, a response to the impossible problem: how to harvest timber from places that God himself seemed to have hidden. Animation, cross-section of island terrain, overlays showing failed truck wrecks versus P16 triumphantly pulling logs uphill. By the late 70s, dozens prowled the clear-cuts, their Detroit diesel hearts thundering like avalanches. But the 1990s brought the reckoning. Environmental laws tightened, markets crashed, mills shuttered overnight, companies vanished, debts unpaid. And the P16s, too wide for highways, too specialized for scrapyards. So they were parked, right there in the stumps and slash piles, keys in ignitions, destined for eternal slumber. Time-lapse footage, vibrant logging camps fading to overgrowth, rusted P16s multiplying in eerie aerial shots of iron graveyards. Sound design, fading chainsaw buzz into wind-through trees silence. Now peel back the legend to reveal the anatomy of this brutal behemoth. At its core pulses the Detroit Diesel Series 7112V71, a two-stroke V12 monster displacing 871 cubic inches, churning out 450 horsepower and 1,200 pounds-feet of torque. No turbochargers or computers here, just pure, analog fury. Air scavenged through roots blowers screams into cylinders, fuel injected raw, igniting in a cacophony of dozen chatter, each piston slamming like a howitzer shell. CGI cutaway, engine block rotates slowly, pistons thundering, blue flames in combustion chambers. Soundbite layered diesel roars building to deafening crescendo. This isn't some fragile modern mill. The 71 series laughs at neglect. Roots blower spinning forever on plain bearings. Injectors you can clean with a rag and spite. Paired to an Allison powershift transmission, 9 forward gears multiplying that torque through a planetary final drive. The chassis? Box section steel beams 10 inches deep, twisted into a ladder frame that flexes like a boxer's spine over 20-foot wheelbases. 6 massive tires alone weighing 1,000 pounds each, mounted on planetary hubs that gear down 5-1, turning mountains into molehills. Detailed blueprints animate on screen, labels popping, roots blower, planetary axles, close-ups of real components, greasy injectors, scarred frame rails. Suspension? Leaf springs thick as axles, soaked in oil baths to shrug off 100,000-pound payloads. Winches fore and aft, 30,000-pound brutes, clutching cables that could lasso locomotives. The cab, a fortress of riveted plate perched high with visibility like a tank commander's turret. Hydraulics for the loader boom lift logs with the grace of a crane, grapples biting 10 feet wide. Every inch screams overkill. Fuel tanks holding 500 gallons of diesel ambrosia, radiators the size of billboards to tame the heat of hellish halls. Slow-mo archival, P16, winching a log uphill, mud flying, tires digging trenches. Vibration effects on screen shake the frame. This was engineering distilled to essence. Brutal, simple, eternal. No ECUs to fry, no sensors to fail. Just iron, leaded gas, and the will to dominate. Transition shot, from gleaming new P16 in 1975 promo film to the derelict in forest. Camera burrowing through moss to reveal faded Pacific P16 lettering. But resurrection? That demands war with entropy itself. The forest whispered secrets of forgotten glory as the resurrectors approached, their boots crunching through decades of leaf litter and rot. This Pacific P16 wasn't just abandoned, it was entombed. Moss draped its cab like a shroud, ferns sprouting from the warped hood where rainwater had pooled for 30 years. Trees, saplings as thick as wrists, punched through the floorboards, their roots entwining the drive shaft like nature's own chains. The air hung heavy with the sour tang of rust-flaked iron and fermented pine needles, undercut by the faint, oily ghost of diesel long evaporated. Drone shot sweeps low over the graveyard. Rusted hulks half sunk in mud, P16 looming central like a fallen titan. Cut to rescuers in rain gear, chainsaws buzzing as they hack back overgrowth. These weren't casual tinkerers. They were diesel disciples, veterans of Vancouver Island's iron boneyards, drawn by legends whispered in logging bars. The buzzin' dozen never dies, they'd say, eyes gleaming over beers. Led by grizzled foreman Mike Hargrove, a man whose hands bore scars from 1,000 winch cables, the team circled their prize. First touch, the door handle crumbled to powder. Inside, the seat sagged into a moldy crater, gauges frozen under a patina of emerald slime. But the heart, the Detroit diesel 12V71, lay silent, its blowers choked with debris, exhaust stacks bent like crushed beer cans. Handheld cam, close-ups of probing fingers scraping moss, flashlight beams piercing gloom. Sound design, eerie drips, distant raven caws, building tension with low synth drone. The diagnosis was brutal, total war with entropy. Pistons seized iron to iron, cylinders glazed with carbon varnish thicker than axle grease. Fuel tanks sloshed with a witch's brew of rainwater, rust slurry and ancient bunker fuel turned to asphalt pitch. The roots blower bearings had welded themselves in place, and the injector pumps, those precision beasts, were gummed solid. "This thing's been pickling since grunge was born," Mike growled, his breath fogging in the chill. They towed it out on lowboys, the chassis groaning like a dying beast, mud sucking at the tires with wet smacks that echoed defeat. Time-lapse, winches straining, P16 inching free amid snapping roots. Splatter effects, mud arcs through air. Faces strained, sweat mixing with rain. Back at the shop, a cavernous shed reeking of solvent and fresh welds, the resurrection began in earnest. Step 1. Purge the poison. They jacked the behemoth skyward, draining tanks that belched a black tarry sludge stinking of sulfur and neglect. 1,000 gallons later, the ground ran like an oil spill from hell. Next, the injectors, 24 needles, each pried free with brass rods and curses. Ultrasonic baths hummed for days, dissolving crud while Mike rebuilt the pumps, honing plungers by hand on a whetstone scarred by generations. Macro shots, injectors disassembled on workbench, bubbles rising in cleaning tanks. Sparks fly as grinder laps metal, overlaid schematics pulse with cleaning animations. But the true leviathan loomed, the seized engine. No yanking it out, this 12V71 weighed 2 tons, bolted like battleship armor. Instead, brute force therapy. They fogged cylinders with penetrating oil laced with ATF, then worked the crankshaft with cheater bars thicker than fence posts. Days blurred into nights. The crank budged a millimeter, then stuck. Heat guns roared, torches kissed bearings cherry red, steam hissing as cold oil met inferno. "Come on, you bastard," Mike muttered, veins bulging. Vibration tools hammered, air chisels screamed, each twist a battle cry against time's grip. Pistons wept rust tears, freeing one by one in a symphony of grinding metal and triumphant clunks. Intense montage. Torches blazing orange, tools whirring, team shouting encouragement. Sweat-drenched faces, slow-mo crank turns. Heartbeat percussion syncs to efforts. Electrics? Laughable, no computers, just relays and solenoids caked in verdigris. They sourced industrial batteries, each a 1,000-pound slab of lead. Cranes whining as they slotted into bays. Fresh belts, hoses braided steel to defy the diesel's rage. The Allison transmission, mercifully fluidless, got new seals and synthetic glory. Tires. Recapped monsters inflated to 100 psi, beads popping like gunfire. Winches rewound, cables gleaming with fresh lube. By week 3, the P16 stood reborn on the shop floor, paint scraped to bare steel, a skeletal warrior awaiting its soul. Progress time-lapse, from mud-caked wreck to gleaming internals exposed. Workers silhouetted against floodlights, shadows dancing like demons. Climax brewed on a foggy dawn, shop doors thrown wide to the wild. Fuel primed, clean diesel laced with ether for mercy. Batteries clamped, glow plugs absent in this two-stroke Titan. Mike in the cab, key trembling like a safecracker's. "Clear!" he bellowed. The team scattered. Turn of the key, nothing. Prime again. Glow of dash lights flickered defiance. Third try. Starter motor. A planetary gear beast. Whined to life, spinning the flywheel with a deepening growl. Seconds stretched eternal. Then, a cough. Blue smoke belched from stacks, acrid and sweet with unburnt hydrocarbons. Another crank. Pop, pop, pop. The roots blowers whirring faintly. Heart stuttering back. Full commitment. Starter howling, compression building. The 12V71 erupted, a seismic roar, two-stroke fury shaking the earth like an airstrike. Black smoke billowed titanic, oil misting the air in a victory fog reeking of burnt rubber and reborn power. Pistons thundered in perfect 45-degree V harmony, the buzzin' chatter rattling windows a mile off. Torque surged, chassis quivering as clutches engaged. Allison clunking into gear. It lived. The giant stirred, exhaust thundering defiance at the sky. Epic slow-mo, key turns, smoke explodes in volumetric clouds. Engine CGI inset, flames erupting in cylinders. Cab shakes violently. Mike's grin cracks through. External cams capture ground tremors, flock of birds scattering. Tears mixed with oil on weathered cheeks. This wasn't revival. It was resurrection. Proof that steel forged in ambition outlasts empires. But as the roar echoed into legend, what becomes of a Titan unchained from its chains? Mike eased off the throttle, the 12V71's roar throttling to a predatory idle, blowers whining like angry hornets in the sudden hush. Blue haze hung thick, oil droplets pattering on the gravel like victory rain. The team rushed forward, hands slapping scarred steel, voices hoarse with raw emotion. "She's alive! The old girl's alive!" But triumph tasted bittersweet amid the shop's clamor. This P16 wasn't just a machine revived. It was a relic yanked from oblivion. a final roar against the silence that claimed its kin. Wide shot. P16 idling triumphantly, smoke curling skyward. Team high fives, backlit by engine glow. Slow pan to distant forest edge. Ominous clouds gathering. They road-tested the beast that afternoon. Tires gouging fresh ruts as 50 tons lumbered forward. The Allison power shift bit smooth through gears. Planetary axles multiplying torque into effortless conquest. Uphill grades that humbled modern 10 tons. Mere speed bumps. Winches spooled test loads. Fallen spars dragged like matchsticks. Exhaust stacks belched black thunder. The buzzin' symphony echoing off shop walls. A sound unchanged since Nixon's logging heyday. Yet every vibration whispered warning. Seals weeping under pressure. Frame rails scarred by decades of wet betrayal. She moved, but entropy lurked, patient as the rain. Action cams mounted on chassis. Tires churn mud. Logs swing wildly. GoPro in cab. Mike's white-knuckled grip. Gauges flickering alive. Overlay telemetry. RPM spiking to 2100, torque curves peaking. Words spread like wildfire through the island's diesel underground. Forums lit up, YouTube scouts inbound. This wasn't the first resurrection. Scattered P16s had clawed back before, but most faltered. One in Oregon coughed to life only to grenade its blower bearings on the victory lap. Another in Alaska hauled once, then sank into a bog during floods. The Pacific P16's curse. Brutal simplicity meets modern neglect. No parts pipelines for 50-year-old roots blowers. No mechanics fluent in unassisted two-strokes. Fuel today? Ultra-low sulfur diesel starves the old beast, demanding additives to mimic leaded glory. And regulations, those ironclad highway bans persist, dooming survivors to private haunts or scrap disguised as art. Montage, archival clips of scrapped P16s at crushers, flames devouring hulks. Cut to surviving rigs, one in a museum under dust covers, another rumbling at a logging expo, crowds awed. Vancouver Island's iron graveyards hold the grim tally. Over 50 P16s abandoned since the 90s crash, when mills like McMillan Bloedel imploded under debt and green edicts. Old-growth bans slashed harvests 90%. Helicopters and feller bunchers stole their thunder. The survivors? Fewer than 20 worldwide. Half roadkill to rust, the rest ghosts in barns or boutique halls for eco-tourists. Mike's prize, donated to a heritage fleet, now prowling demo runs at fall fairs, hauling faux logs for cheering crowds who never knew the real war. Its Detroit heart, rebuilt thrice over, idles eternally in a climate-controlled shed, oiled, exercised, a monument to what was. Aerial drone tour, vast clear-cuts now regrown, interspersed with rusting skeletons. Close on Mike's P16 gleaming under spotlights at event, kids' faces lit by its roar. Stats overlay, 20 survivors, 50-plus graveyard ghosts. Why did they vanish? Not frailty. The P16 outlived its makers. Pacific Car and Foundry folded in the 80s. Detroit Diesel pivoted to emissions-choked pups. It was the world's pivot. From conquest to conservation, muscle to microchips. Loggers once felled cathedrals for pennies. Now drones map sustainable cuts. GPS-guided skidders sip fuel like priests at communion. The P16 embodies the lost era, when progress meant domination, not databases. No nanny cams, no kill switches, just men and machines betting against physics, winning ugly. Split-screen, 1970s frenzy, chainsaws devouring forests, P16s thundering, versus today, silent heli drops, solar-powered mills. Fading music underscores elegy. Yet in its roar, a defiant pulse endures. Mike, retired now, visits yearly, hand on the throttle. She reminds us, he says, voice gravel over the idle chatter, that some steel's forged tougher than time. We tamed the wild, but the wild reclaims. These beasts, they're our apology and our boast. As the sun dips behind regrown ridges, the P16 falls silent once more, stacks cooling to twilight blue. Not dead, but dormant, waiting. Because in the rust and rain of Vancouver Island, legends don't rust away. They rumble on. Final epic shot, P16 silhouetted against sunset, exhaust faintly steaming. Fade to black with engine echo lingering. End screen, Subscribe for more forgotten giants. Philosophical text overlay. In the roar of the Detroit diesel, we hear the heartbeat of an empire built on iron will. Credits roll over subtle two-stroke loop.